dirty, so we need to be scrubbed for exposure. We get shuffled off to some makeshift showers where we strip down, hand off all our gear to dudes in MOPP suits that clean it while we get ourselves a nice freezing cold bleach shower in what amounts to basically a few tarps hung up for a semblance of privacy from the rest of the FOB. After it's all said and done, they had given every last bit of our gear and ourselves a full scrub. We got different vehicles since it would take them longer to do those, plus replacing the crew systems and other electronics in them. A few weeks later we got sent on some convoy off to a major FOB. Get told whole squad has to go to medical to check for any adverse reactions to the exposure from that night. Get our blood drawn, then nothing. Went on a patrol near where that compound was later, nothing left but a crater. All the locals stayed away from it too. And that, my friends, is my story. I can elaborate on why. I think shit was not on the level due to minor details. You don't use bleach to clean up chemical weapons, that's for biological stuff only, etc., but there it is. Mostly uncut and from my perspective at the time. After telling the story, the op goes on to point out another weird thing about the event. When the things initially went into the compound, there were only 5 of them, but then the convoy was attacked by 8 individuals. Where did the others come from? Getting the imagery is a mystery to me. Literally every night without fail I appear in the same spot, curled up on the floor of what appears to be an abandoned and decaying industrial building. At first it was novel, then became distressing, but while I still talk about it in therapy, it's no longer an unwelcome experience. Instead I regard it as a sort of second home. There's nothing especially welcoming about it, but in exploring the foundry I've discovered the layout is persistent, and anything I break or ream remains that way in the next dream. Additionally, the machinery makes no sense. I don't know much about how such machinery works, which is why I figured this was the case, but I'm not an idiot. I know what a gear does, what a piston does. But in the dream the machinery is assembled as though by someone with no conception of what machinery is in general. Gears working against each other, belts driving wheels which drive belts hitch drive wheels back to the original wheel, with no apparent purpose. It became difficult to accept that my own subconscious was coming up with it. At the recommendation of my therapist I began mapping it on paper, and taking note of anomalies. For example, on some items there are labels or other blurbs of text in a language that I don't recognize. I can see abstract shapes while dreaming, but they change as I move the object and look at it from different angles, and I cannot clearly recall any individual character when I awaken. In every dream I am wearing whatever I had on when I went to bed. I began to experiment by stripping off my clothing in the dream. Of course, when I woke up, I was still wearing that clothing. I don't know what I expected to happen. Once I began mapping and experimenting, a new element of the dream appeared. One or more people following and monitoring me. I would initially never see them, only hear their footsteps on walkways above me, fleeing when I try to chase. There is light coming through windows, but it cannot be natural sunlight. It is a rich shade of sickly orange, and while shadows cast by the sun are all perpendicular to one another, shadows cast by light coming in through the windows are at angles that suggest the light source is much closer. I have tried on many occasions to clean the dirty windows so I can see where the light comes from or to break them with rocks and rusted tools, neither works. All the while, I hear the shifting feet of watchers lingering nearby. At any rate, the last time I posted here you requested that I learn 3D software so that I could provide a map of the area I have explored so far. I apologize if this is crude, but it's the best I can do with what I've learned in that time. I have color-coded the various relevant portions so I can refer to them if you have questions. The yellow, rounded room with the tall windows is where I wake up. The green room contains the rows of machinery, the orange things. The blue cylinder is a shaft containing a spiral staircase, with several decks at intervals on the way down. These rounded, carved-out rooms, seemingly concrete or very smoothly cut rock, contain cages all around the outer wall. Sometimes sound or movement comes from them, but they are dark. I cannot see what they contain and they are locked. One is open, and empty. For a long time I thought the spiral staircase was endless. I shortened it in the 3D map for the sake of showing everything in one picture. It continues for such a distance that unless I devote the entire duration of my time in the dream to descending it, I reach the bottom before waking up. For that reason I haven't explored much at the very bottom beyond what you see here. The staircase ends in what looks like some type of old-fashioned office. A rusting metal chair at a wooden desk with a few filing cabinets to one side, looking out over an abyss. Outside it becomes apparent that the room hangs by the concrete shaft containing the stairwell from the roof of a massive subterranean cavern. Outside there are a few platforms hanging from the cavern roof by chains, with wooden walls and darkness. There are what look like slowly moving gray storm clouds. I have thrown stuff down into that abyss, I never hear an impact. Nor can I see any walls to the cavern. The ceiling of it seems to stretch on for miles, receding into darkness. Here is another shot of the hanging building in the cave which gives a better sense of scale. The platforms originally had some rotting cardboard boxes and tools on them, all of which I have long since dropped off the edge trying to get a sense of how deep the cavern is, to no avail. The clouds below look exactly as you might expect storm clouds to look from an airplane. I am powerfully curious to know what is below them but too frightened to let myself drop from one of the hanging platforms in order to find out. It isn't clear what would happen. I used to have normal dreams, and some night no dreams at all. This started all of a sudden one night and continued ever since. Never letting up. If it were someplace pleasant, representative of my desires, it would be explicable. But if I feel anything while there, it is cold, weary, and slightly nauseous, there is a sense that something is wrong with the place. The angles, the colors, the nonsense machinery. Every electric light in there emits the exact sickly orange light that also comes in through the windows, presumably from outside. There is very little variation in color, from grays to very subdued browns. It feels like decay, everywhere. Sometimes I try to fix the machinery, usually without result since it was apparently never designed to work in the first place. But occasionally I can rearrange it into something that at least moves or makes noise when activated. I feel most intensely watched while doing this. Like my observers are trying to learn what the machinery means to me and how it's supposed to be assembled. My therapist is too confident in her interpretations, and they are flattering to an uncomfortable degree. She believes that the incompetently designed abstract do-nothing machinery represents my frustration with an inefficiently organized and operated society, and my struggles to fix some of it and make it work, to whatever small degree, represents struggles in my day-to-day life to change the order of things for the better. This is entirely, in my view, a product of her fondness for me. She is too impressed by what is objectively a pretty dull person except for these strange nighttime escapades. Perhaps she feels sorry for me. No, I have never tried to write anything in the dreams. I apologize for the delay, I was having trouble getting anything by your CAPTCHA system. It has been a long time since I posted here. I can try writing. I expect some anticlimactic result, like when I experimented with clothing. The experience seems designed to thwart any effort to pry it apart and see it from the outside. Literally, with regards to my efforts to get outside of the building, I have this lingering deep-seated suspicion that I could see what's outside. It would answer many of my questions about that place. The parts are not the same from machine to machine. They are in some places similar but never of identical dimensions. They are seemingly random in shape. It isn't obvious that they're even designed to do anything. I have searched for similar tools online and found nothing. Some change shape slightly if I look away even for a moment, then look back. I have managed to use them awkwardly, to effect minor repairs only because some are coincidentally shaped such that I can use them as levers or are badly fit for wrenches. Some implements, found mainly on the cage levels, aren't tools so far as I can tell. They have sharp jutting points or blades. They might be weapons, but they have hinges, handles, all the trappings of tools. Not all can even be used safely without injuring the user. Who designed them and what are they for? I feel like the answers are outside the building. But the harder I try to escape, the further away it becomes. Something always prevents it. There's this strong sense that it's a charade. An inward-facing bubble of illusion. Like the set of a television show. If I could find some hole in it, somewhere that the builder forgot to patch up and get outside, I'm certain I'd see it for what it really is. If there is a world outside of it, I cannot imagine it will simply be a city, or countryside, or anywhere intuitive. The cavern seems to preclude that, as does the deep tungsten light coming in through the tall windows at angles all wrong for sunlight. Perhaps it's all underground. Or perhaps there is some land outside of it, with something other than the sun bathing it in that nauseating orange light. I'm desperate to find out, and in the past few nights every effort has gone towards probing the furthest reaches of the building for some escape. So far, nothing. Have you ever tried holding onto some object like a tool until you woke up? To see if you could bring it with you out of the dream? Yes, with the same result as the clothing experiment. For a time I accepted that as proof positive that it was in fact just a very persistent recurring dream. I moved from that to taking very seriously the possibility I was losing my mind. Following some soul-searching and self-testing, I determined I am still in fact sane, just rattled by an unusual experience that won't stop. There's something wrong with it? Little things. Like there aren't any plants. In a lot of these urbex photos of abandoned industrial buildings there's grass, moss, whatever. Not in the dream. No plants, no rats, no living things other than myself. Little things like that, and the chairs aren't all the same size. Some are small enough to not quite be plausibly child-sized but still difficult to sit in. Others large enough you must hop to get onto them. Often skewed at a slight angle, like slightly melted. Like the tools, none of them are right. I can't believe this is, or was a reflection of, any actual industrial building that ever existed. Didn't you say you saw a creature previously? The boy in the overalls. It was exciting when I finally caught him. I believed he was the source of the footsteps I'd been hearing. But even when holding it and discovering only a smooth featureless expanse of skin where it should be, smooth as an egg, even then I heard the footsteps and shuffling of nearby observers. He has also been following and watching me, but he isn't one of them. I haven't seen them yet. I think he used to be in the one cage that isn't locked, part way down the stairwell. He got out, or someone let him out. Possibly that's what's in the rest of the cages. This is a close approximation of the color of the light. From outside, and from the bulbs. Why this color? I thought it was grime on the bulbs or that they were tinted. They aren't tinted, the glass is dingy but clear. All light, regardless of source, is the same gross orange. The only